Press Control Option Space.
Okay, so I'm hoping that I'm recording. Let me just get into Chrome here for a second.
Google Chrome. Chrome. APH. Or W2.
Now, a couple of things. So, in preparation for this business, I have gone to speech not all of the time, but a lot more of the time than I used to. I found an app on my Android phone that basically calculates one's eye strain. I don't know how it does it. I am not. I must stress before anybody jumps down my throat. I am not. Using this to replace the advice of a qualified physician. They always come first, but I was very curious as to see what my threshold was. So I ran the test, and it turns out my eye strain is severe, along with my glare sensitivity. And I don't believe my vision has changed since the last time I reported, but it had gone from 2080 to 2100. I am finding it more comfortable to use speech whenever I can. For those of you who can see, excuse me, you'll probably notice that I have the APH website up in front of me, and I'm on the Orbit Reader 20 page. I have personally decided that I want to go with this Braille display, and there's a very big reason for it. Even though I have never seen it, it is very new. The reason has to do with the price. So hang on a second, let me show you what I mean.
Heading 1 2. Breakthrough price. Available Orbit Reader 2.0 product picture. The high cost of refreshable Braille devices, mechanical Braille generated by computer link. Orbit research. The high cost of refreshable Braille devices, mechanical Braille generated by computer link has remained nearly constant for over 30 years. The transforming Bell LLC agreed to fund development of technology proposed by Link. Orbit research. This technology will make it possible for APH to offer the Orbit Reader 2.0 trademark for only $449. You are currently on text element inside of web content. To exit this area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Now, I realize that my speech is pretty darn fast. For those of you who are not used to electronic speech, I do apologize, but for those of you who are, I just wanted to give you a sample of how good I have gotten at listening to it. For those of you who cannot see, and for those of you who thought that Alex was chattering away too fast, the big thing about this display is that it's available for $449. Now, you're thinking, $449? That's expensive. Well, for 20 cells of Braille, let's look at it.
System dialog. You are currently on system dialog.
Okay, I think Avast is just, let me see. Let me get in close here. Yeah, Avast virus definitions are updated. Good. So let me get back into Chrome.
QuickTime Player. VirtualBox. Finder. Zoom Text. Google Chrome.
We're going to get into VirtualBox in a moment.
Chrome. APH. Orbit Reader 0 window.
There we go. Anybody who's a voiceover user know how to get out of those pop-ups? Because the only thing I can think of is to switch it off and switch it back on. Now, keep in mind I hadn't tried a close window command. I don't know if that would work. Anyway, so you're thinking $449 is a lot of money. Well, for 20 cells of Braille, the typical pricing is around $1,500 to $2,000. So this really is, this is a breakthrough in price. Now, the display, it doesn't have an awful lot, but it has enough. It has a note-taking capability. It has a book reading capability. I can download, because I am a Bookshare member, I can download books in Braille, export them to an SD card, and read them on this, which is great. But that's really about it. I'd have to take a look at the manual, but I don't know if this has any settings for Braille table alteration. I think you can only display text in uncontracted Braille as far as when it's in standalone mode, which is where you can, again, produce your own documents, read books, work in the file manager. Everything is stored on an SD card that the unit comes with that also contains the user manual, but of course you can put in your own card. I think the maximum size is 32 gigabytes, which, if you think about the fact that this can only read text files, that pretty much gives you a house full of information on this little thing. But some of you are thinking, well, isn't your state rehabilitation services going to pay for it? No, they are not. Because of my education level, the system is set up so that the only way for me to go in and get them to pay for this is if I were to go back into the job market. And I'd already tried that before going into my doctorate, and it didn't work out so well. There are a number of factors that I feel probably contributed to that. I won't go into that, but needless to say, their technology specialist is fantastic. You are awesome if you're watching this. You know who you are. Same with their O&M specialist. You know who you are. But unfortunately, in the end, it didn't necessarily work out, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back for my doctorate, close the account. Strangely enough, after I went back for my doctorate and I applied for a graduate assistantship, talked to some instructors, some faculty that I already knew, then I managed to get work. Strange how things work out sometimes. But no, if I'm going to be paying for this out of pocket, I want it to be something that, because let's look at it this way. The Orbit Reader 20 is a refreshable Braille display that is able to hook up to devices via Bluetooth. Now granted, I don't know how many it can store, and it cannot connect to more devices than one at any one time. That said, I've got an iPad Pro, I've got a Google Pixel, I've got an iPhone 6 Plus, I've got this Mac, I've got Windows in a virtual machine, which we'll talk about in a moment. I'm going to show you. So in total, that's like probably 5 devices off the bat. So if we do the math, in fact, let's do the math right now. Hang on a second. Alexa, what is 449 divided by 5?
449 divided by 5 is 89.8.
So if you look at it at like $90 per device, then that's actually not bad. The way I look at a Braille display's worth is, especially if it's Bluetooth, how many devices can you use it with? Break down that cost of the display per device. There you go. A couple of other interesting developments that have occurred.
Reading web content. Q, what is JAWS for SPSS?
What is JAWS for SPSS? Why is that important? Well, my university uses SPSS analytics for statistical courses, and I've only taken one, and I've got a couple more that I need to take, I'm thinking. Unfortunately, the only screen reader that works with SPSS is JAWS. So I'm going to have no choice but to put JAWS on a Windows computer, whether that be one of my family members, or if I go out and buy a low to mid-range Windows PC with a Core i in it and Windows 10 and put SPSS on that. It's either that or learn how to use another program. And the only other one that I think that's accessible via screen readers is something called R, and I've never touched that. I would like to be able to use SPSS if I can at all, because, again, that's what the university uses, and it would be a lot easier for me to learn to adapt and use that. It's one thing to have to learn how to navigate a program via screen reader. If you have to navigate a different program than everybody else is using, then that just makes things a whole lot more complicated, in the sense that it's more difficult for you to learn it, it's more difficult for you to explain things to them, especially if something is labeled differently in one program than it might be in another. So the next time I get around to taking stats, I will probably end up using a JAWS machine. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what are you thinking? You're jumping the gun. Surgery hasn't happened yet. No, but with the level of eye strain that I just talked about earlier, if that truly is the case, if my eye strain is severe, then for extended periods, even if I do retain some vision, for extended periods, it would be better for me to use speech than it would be to use even magnification, just to give my eyes a break if I have to continue working. So in that case, I still need to be prepared in that sense. So from what I've looked up, stats software just isn't screen reader friendly. The only one that I've found, again, is for SPSS in particular, is JAWS via the Java Access Bridge. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's something.
Reading web content. CDA.
And another thing that I've done, I have gotten used to using TalkBack. There are a couple of things that annoy me about TalkBack, and it's nothing to do with actually using the screen reader itself. In fact, I've managed to... One of the gestures by default that gets into the notification tray is one that I just can't seem to master. Thankfully, the Google Pixel has gestures on its fingerprint sensor that can essentially replace some of those gestures, and I've activated that for the notification shade. It's made things so much easier. But one thing that annoys me about TalkBack is that I have to be directly on the notification in order to dismiss it, unlike VoiceOver where I can be anywhere on the screen. Now, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe, any TalkBack users, please chime in, but in my experience, I could not dismiss it from just anywhere on the screen. I actually had to be in the notification itself, which is interesting because it's an extra step to find out exactly where it is. Another interesting little tidbit is just the subtle differences. There are some things in TalkBack that are not labeled in applications that are on VoiceOver, which honestly makes things kind of annoying. In fact, until just at least last night when I noticed it, I don't know, maybe it had been there for a while, but until last night, TalkBack couldn't even recognize the send button. It was basically unlabeled. Thankfully, I was able to memorize the layout, which is another reason I'm getting used to doing speech, because I know that immediately after surgery I will be without my sight for a little while because of the recovery process. And so I've been able to memorize the layout. So so I know where certain things are. But it's interesting in that they until very recently the send button didn't have a label on it. That was just weird. So what's in front of you then? For those of you who are familiar with SwiftKey, this is the Braille equivalent, the Swift Braille 6-key Braille keyboard. This is awesome because utilizing a combination of just one hand, piano notes, and haptic feedback, I can effectively type in Braille to my friends without having to worry about navigating a tiny QWERTY keyboard that's, honestly, in my opinion, it's slower than iOS. And the only Google keyboard that I've been able to work with is the default. I honestly like Swift Braille a lot better. If I can't use Swift Braille, I'll go to voice typing. There is one thing about Swift Braille that you need to be aware of if you're going to try it. Number one, it's only available for Android. You can't get it for iOS. Number two, and I've already written the developer about this. He said he's going to see about looking into getting this amended. But right now, there's no support for any Braille contraction code. You only have uncontracted Braille. And I believe it's literary Braille at that. I don't believe ASCII Braille is supported either. You only get capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, and something called special symbols, which that might be the ASCII Braille code. I haven't tried it. But it's actually quite easy to use. All the buttons are self-explanatory. You've got up and down arrows to switch through the different keyboards, because they're not all available at, well, hang on. Are they available at once? I guess they are all available at once if you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can arrow through the various keyboards so that if you don't know the number sign, you can go in and switch to numbers, and it'll automatically recognize your next input of dots as a number. So that's really cool. There are 2 delete functions to delete everything and to delete a single word. You can copy your text to clipboard. Now, the only thing is, when entering text into a field like Amazon search, you can't use the keyboard's built-in hide keyboard because that also closes the edit field. So effectively, you can't search. So in order to work around with that, what I found is if you hit the back key on your device, that will close the keyboard but leave the edit field open. At least that has in the notification shade when replying to letters. I haven't tried it anywhere else. Oh wait, yes I have. Yeah, I have text messages, Facebook Messenger. Yeah, it works in multiple apps. So you have to use the system back key, not the keyboard's hide key, in order to keep the edit field open. And then you can go in and search. Other than those little niggles, I've honestly grown to really like this. This is a great keyboard. This is a fun little keyboard. It's quick. Once you get the hang of it, it can be really quick. You absolutely have to wait until the keyboard registers your punctuation or letter or whatever it is you're typing. Because otherwise, if you go from one letter immediately to the other without that announcement, then you're going to end up inputting something else. And I've done that several times. It's yeah. See, was there anything else I was going to cover on here? Nope. But the fact that it's slow is, I think, another case for the Orbit Reader 20. And there is actually, speaking of which, there is one question. Because a lot of people will get a Braille display or would like to get a Braille display for the fact that they can turn speech off and yet still have discrete private access to their information. I'm definitely in that camp. The interesting part is, in TalkBack, there's no way to turn off the speech without turning everything else off. That said, TalkBack users, can you have BrailleBack engaged without TalkBack? Because obviously I don't have a Braille display, so right now BrailleBack is useless. For those of you who do not know, BrailleBack is the Braille interface for Android. But if I could get BrailleBack to work by itself without TalkBack, it'd be nice to turn TalkBack off and still have access to the system. So there's that.
12 o'clock, 76 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now let's get on to the fun stuff. You probably noticed in my application switcher that I've got VirtualBox running. And I'm going to show you why.
QuickTime Player. VirtualBox. VirtualBox. Or OPM VirtualBox Manager. Window. New button. Space with VirtualBox containing window or OPM VirtualBox Manager.
So right now I've got it selected on Windows 10, and we're going to start that up.
Name and operating system. Text. Name. Text. Type. Text. Version. Text.
Whoops.
You are currently on text field. To enter text in this field, type.
Oh, whoops. I accidentally hit the new button.
Type. Text. Microsoft Window image. Version. Text. Windows 7. Switch. Go back. Dim button. Switch to NOBR mode. Lessons. Go back. Dim. Continue. Dim button. Cancel button. Triggers the action cancel dialog. 4. Window or OPM VirtualBox Manager.
So,
button. To click this button, press Control Option Space. Settings button. Discard save start button. You are currently on button. To click this button, press Control Option Space.
so you can see VirtualBox is actually pretty darn accessible. Before we actually start the machine, I want to check something, because I've never done this. Let me check.
Row area. Text. Close button. Minimize button. Full screen button or OPM virtual button. Settings button. Discard save start button. Row area. You are currently on row area. Text. You are currently on text element. Close button.
Okay, so
Text. Row area start button.
I take that
You are
back.
currently on button.
It's accessible enough to where if you've already set up your machine, you can start it. Otherwise, not so much. Maybe I'm missing something. I have never used speech access to this extent since high school. So that was quite a ways ago. So anyway, you do have access enough to where if you have previously set up machines, you can go ahead and start them. So that's what we're going to do here.
Shut VirtualBox VM. Windows 1 VirtualBox heat triggers voiceover off.
So we're going to switch off VoiceOver because you're going to be in for a bit of a surprise. Once Windows boots up, it's going to take a moment. Now, while we're waiting, I'm going to tell you this machine has been equipped with 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gig onboard storage, and because this is a test bed, oh, never mind. Here we go.
Windows sign-in dialog 11 ratio 41 Thursday, June 1.
Okay, so for those of you who are efficient Windows screen reader users, you probably noticed a familiar voice. Let me log in.
English, United States, US. Password edit protected, Alt F8 to show password. Star, 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 star. Desktop window.
Yep, I've got NVDA running on this system.
Taskbar.
Now, here's the thing. Honestly, I love NVDA. I really do. I've spent a week with it. I found it very, very easy to use. The only hiccup has nothing to do with NVDA itself, but rather the virtual machine, in that because it's a virtual machine, just the very nature of it, even with the specs I equipped it with, it still stutters from time to time. So let me go into the NVDA menu, and I'm going to show you what I've done here.
NVDA menu. Preferences submenu D. Tools submenu D.
Let's see, I want to go to
Preferences submenu D.
Preferences.
General settings, synthesizer S. Voice settings B. Voice settings dialog. Voice combo box English collapse Alt plus B.
So what I've done is,
Variant combo box max collapse Alt plus A. Rate slider 70 Alt plus R.
so I've got the rate set to 70%.
Rate boost checkbox not checked Alt plus D.
Now, I'm not going to turn that on. For those of you who cannot understand the speech, it said rate boost, and what that does is that speeds up the speech threefold, which is. In fact, here, I'll turn it on just a second, just so you can see.
Space. It's Alt plus D. Rate Alt plus D.
See, that's too fast for me, so I'm going to switch it off.
Space. Not checked.
So these are actually pretty standard, pretty straightforward, but I love how easy this is to use. The only other problem, and again, this has nothing to do with NVDA and everything to do with the fact that I'm using a Macintosh keyboard, the only insert key is the numpad 0, which I don't mind. A lot of screen readers on Windows use the numpad as a reading keyboard. For this reason, I decided that if I do, and the keyword is if I do decide to go ahead and get a Windows PC rather than using one of my family members' systems, it's definitely going to have a numpad on the keyboard. So in order to get out of here, it's a bit of acrobatic work. You have to use the FN key, which is actually right here in the 6-pack where the home key is, or the page up, or wherever it is on most Windows keyboards. So Function Alt 1, 2, 3, 4.
English, United States, US.
So let's go into Firefox.
Desktop list. Must free antivirus 2.7. F.
Okay, so first letter navigation doesn't work. That's interesting.
Must safe zone browser free. Google Chrome 4.7. Mozilla Firefox 5.7.
So we're going to go to Firefox.
Mozilla Firefox start page. Mozilla Firefox start page document. Search query edit collapse blank.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to the same page we did on the Mac.
Page. Space. 2. 0.
So I'm just going to go ahead and search. In case anybody couldn't hear over the chimes, I was typing in APH Orbit Reader 20. So,
Collapse. APH Orbit Reader 20 Google search visit. Link 3 reader users. Click it.
okay, so hang on a second. Let me hit this link here because I want to turn that off.
APH Orbit Reader 20 Google search visit. Button.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do an insert F7, which is interesting because I have to hold down the 0, FN, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Elements list dialog. Tree view. Level 0 sign in 1 on 45.
So let's go to A,
APH Orbit Reader 20 9 on 45 level 0.
enter.
APH Orbit Reader 20 Google search Mozilla Firefox. APH Orbit Reader 20 Google search document. Button collapse Google Apps. Mainland market.
So this is the exact same page that we were in over on the Mac side, but I have to say that I have found NVDA to be incredibly, what the heck is this? Let's say, welcome gift. Oh. Much like the pop-ups on the Windows side, This pop-up actually illustrates a little bit of a problem I'm having right now. I'll explain why in a second, but back to what I was saying. Overall, I found NVDA to be extremely easy to use. It's just fantastic.
Audit reader 20 heading level 1. Heading level 2 breakthrough plus available soon.
So I'm just navigating with my arrow keys.
Graphic audit reader 20 product picture with control keys labeled. The high cost of refreshable Braille devices, mechanical Braille generated by computer-driven pins, has remained nearly constant for over 30 years. The transforming Braille group LLC agreed to fund development of a new technology proposed by Linked Audit Research.
Now, I'm still very, very new to the commands. I can't remember what a say all is. It's something up arrow. Let's see, is it insert up arrow? Let's see.
Development of a new technology proposed by Linked Audit Research.
Nope, that's current line. I thought it was something up arrow or something. Was it down arrow?
Development of a new technology proposed by Linked Audit Research. This technology will make it possible for
There we go.
the Audit Reader 20 trademark for only $449. Link learn exciting details of the Audit Reader 20 in this special article. IPH discussion of Graphic Audit Reader 20 with notes highlighting the control keys. Heading.
Okay. So you get the idea, and well, do you know? I actually either learned or remembered. I don't know which. Something. But no, I honestly love NVDA. I find it very easy to use. It's non-obtrusive, and the fact that the really beautiful part is, I did have JAWS on here, and I updated JAWS, and it broke the whole system. I'm not kidding. Boy, am I glad this is a virtual machine, because it broke. It just broke. Now, I have not tried Narrator yet. I'm honestly getting very comfortable with NVDA. And NVDA, the really cool part about NVDA is that it's a lot more accessible. And when I say that, I understand NPR. Narrator is really at its prime in the Windows 10 Creators Update. Well, my university uses systems with Windows 7. I don't think we have any Windows 10 systems, and if we do, I don't know if they're running the Creators Update. And the fact that you have to have the latest of the latest in order to get Narrator to even be remotely usable to such an extent that Narrator is, I'd feel better just having Narrator with portable preferences with me. And again, that goes back to the whole business of SPSS and Windows, which is interesting because... like I said earlier, NVDA doesn't even work with the SPSS. I'd have to use JAWS, which is why I'm honestly loathing that. Excuse me. But, you know, without SPSS or some form of statistical software, I'd have to run all my data analysis manually, which is... ew. It would take too long. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to get out of here. Function Alt 1, 2, 3, 4.
US desktop list Mozilla Firefox 5.7.
I'm going to check the time here real quick. Where are you? Oh, wrong key combination.
11:50 a.m. 11:50 Thursday, June 1, 2017.
Okay, so this I honestly feel this feels very, very similar to JAWS. So one of the problems, though, that I'm encountering is this. So I'm going to go up to Avast.
Google Chrome 4.7. Avast Safe Zone Browser 3.7. Avast Free Antivirus 2.7. Avast Free Antivirus.
You'll notice I'm arrowing around, tabbing around.
System submenu space.
So we've got a system submenu. Let's see what that does.
Restore unavailable R. Movement. Success. Minimize N. Maximize unavailable X. Close C. System submenu space.
But that's it.
Restore unavailable R. System submenu space. Restore unavailable R. System sub. Avast Free Anti.
So right now it just noticed that I'm in Avast Free Antivirus, but I'm not getting anywhere. Now, my guess is that in order to get this to work, I'd have to turn on review mode. But off the top of my head, I can't remember the keyboard command for that. NVDA users, if you could give me a hint here. Or could it just be that Avast in its current form is not accessible? That's my biggest concern, is that if I have to switch antiviruses, I want it to be free. I want it to be good. I've used Avast for years because of their track record of really, really getting into the nitty-gritty and protecting. And I want it to be as accessible. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100%, but if I can have something that's usable with speech, you know, obviously that'd be a big plus. So we're going to get out of here. 2, 3, 4.
Desktop list. Avast free antivirus 2.7. Start window. Click on a window. Search box. Edit blank. Microphone button. Navigation menu list. Toggle navigation menu collapse. Activate to show all height labels. Apps view list recently. Navigation menu list. Toggle navigation menu collapse. Activate to show all height labels. User account for VirtualBox. Places list. File X log settings 2.2. Power. Pop-up window. Power options. Restart 2.2. Shutdown 1.2. Navigation menu list.
So yeah, so far I'm really, really liking NVDA. Again, I have not tried Narrator. The only, like I said, NVDA is not compatible with SPSS, so I'm going to have to use JAWS. The only other problem that I'm having with it has to do with that
Voice over on virtual.
with that business about Avast. So yeah, that's a bit of an update. Thought I'd keep you guys up to date. Now, I also wanted to, the reason I also made this video was to address some comments. One of my users suggested what am I thinking? Oh yeah, one of the users suggested that I would have to ditch JAWS. Unfortunately, that's not going to be completely 100% impossible. I do intend to be using NVDA on Windows, but I'm not going to be able to escape JAWS completely, as I've been talking about. Another user suggested that I use my phone for PDF files. I'd already tried that. I'll try it again, but in my initial experience, we had a bit of a problem where it wasn't necessarily easy for me to navigate around, because with academic articles, you don't necessarily read them from beginning to end, especially if you're looking for something. For instance, if I'm trying to replicate somebody's study, then one of the things that I wanted to immediately jump to is their methods section and take a look at that and scrutinize that. So again, I'll give it another try. Maybe I'm missing something, but in my initial experience, it looked to me like the navigation was not going to be a strong suit for PDFs on the mobile system. And not only that, I also need to be able to copy and paste text from an article into another document. That way, instead of having to go back through and search for what I found relevant that I was going to use, that was going to point to in my own writing, I just take what's interesting, put it into what I personally refer to as sort of a list thing. What I'll do is I'll take a look at the quote, and I'll take a look and see how can I say this in my own words that highlights the exact same thing and yet is still me. And obviously, I'd cite the source, duh. But I basically, it's more than just reading the PDFs. It's also manipulating within them that I need to do. So I don't know how well mobile's going to be able to take care of that. KNFB Reader, another suggestion. I'm definitely going to look into that. So that's a bit of an update. As far as my vision goes, I just talked about the eye strain. Headaches are, I don't know if they're necessarily getting worse, but they're definitely, I'm noticing them more. I'm keeping TalkBack and standby at all times, so that whenever I feel the need to, I can just switch over to speech at the push of a button. That being said, I still find VoiceOver a lot less cumbersome. And I say that because there have been times when TalkBack will lose focus and I will get completely lost. And I realize that happens in VoiceOver too, but I'm still not 100% used to TalkBack, so whenever that happens, I'm not always aware of it. All I know is that speech sometimes flies out the door without any provocation, which is really annoying. So I do think that if I ended up having to go to speech 100% of the time, what I'll probably do is, I've gotten to the point where the Google Pixel is a very usable device, but I would probably get the iPhone anniversary update. I would probably use the Pixel as a trade-in and go back to iOS. Let's see what else. Headaches, eye strain, glare. Speech 100% of the time. I think that's it. All right. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update, and that's where I am. Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.